Hey, this is Jim. Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I've got a guest that we're going to have on the show here in just a couple minutes who is on his way to hitting $800,000 in sales this year. His model started off as books. He was just selling books, and he would get a lot of books and big orders and take them to the warehouse and making about $10,000 in sales a month, and it was good. And he's had a job for most of the time too, while he's been building his Amazon business, a sales job. So we're going to go through the story with him. But the cool part of the story, to jump to the good parts of what you're going to learn today, is some of those things that he's experienced as he's grown from a smaller seller, relatively smaller seller, to one recent month was $180,000. That was kind of a spike on the radar. And he talks through why that happened, how he found the cash to buy all that inventory, how he managed it, and where they're at now and what they expect to do. He's working full-time with a career that has him traveling a lot. And he's kind of leveraged that travel into finding unique places to source inventory. He's got some very high-priced items that he's selling on Amazon, which is interesting. He's buying things for around $300 and selling them for a few thousand. That's pretty cool. He gets into that as well today. But I just love that this is another young family with some young kids and some kids on the way, and just a really neat future ahead of them as you think through. They're doing this together. They're doing it from home. He plans to go full-time by the end of this year. About 6 months or so from now is his goal. And just a really insightful interview that reveals what it's like to scale from really not knowing much about selling online to building what they're going to have as multiple streams of income, because I know some of the things they've got going on that are pretty special from talking to him. So excited to bring you Mr. Brandon Mizell today. You're going to really enjoy this interview. Just a straight shooting guy who tells you what he knows, a very open book type of personality. And I sure appreciated my time with him as I got to know him a little bit. So let's jump over and get Brandon on the line right now. Enjoy this episode. So Brandon, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
It's really good to have you. We've been trying to do this for a while, as often happens with busy, successful people, man. But I'm looking forward to getting to know you. I've seen your name pop up. You've shared some incredible screenshots. You've been going at it hard for a while, man. Tell us your story.
Yeah, definitely. I also appreciate you having me on here. It's been listening to pretty much every podcast that you've come out with so far. So it'd be interesting to hear it from my own, but my own voice. But just a little bit about my story. Starts probably a couple of years ago. I was in outside sales, and I was doing very well in my career job, and I had a couple friends of mine that had been selling on Amazon, and they had been trying to talk me into it and get me doing it. And I was doing okay at the time, so my work-life balance was pretty good. And so I told them I really wasn't interested, and I was doing okay, and I didn't want the distraction, And so I'll never forget it. It was July 31st of 2018. 2017, I got laid off from that good job, and so I went from August 1st until, basically January 1st, I didn't have a job. We survived, had to sell some assets, but we survived. But I used that time, and I found out how hard it was to actually find a job. It's a lot harder than people think, especially when you're being honest. And so I used that time to not only try to find another job, but also learn a little bit more about the Amazon thing, because at the time my buddy was trying to get me to do it. He was doing about $10K a month. And then, he'd been trying to sell me on it for about a year. So, by the time that I was kind of looking at it more seriously, and he found out that I had got laid off, he was like, man, you really need to take a look at this, because he kind of upped it to around $40K a month. So I started kind of looking at the numbers, and he was honest to me about some of his returns. And so I got a good idea of like his real take home was. And so I started to kind of look at it a little bit more serious, and started getting on YouTube and just really kind of immersing myself in in it, the whole atmosphere, and joined a lot of the groups. And so, I told myself that I was just never going to, put myself and my family in that vulnerable situation again, to where all of our eggs, all our income is coming from one stream. So, starting as soon as I started my new job, started getting a little bit of income coming in, I immediately started selling. I started with books and started with the little cherry picking model, going to thrift stores, and any free time I had, go to library sales and things like that. I kind of got, one of the problems I ran into was to do my job, finish around 3 or 4 o'clock. By the time I really could get out to hit up a lot of those thrift stores, they're all closed.
Okay. So this was when you still had a job.
This is right. Exactly.
Okay. Because you started, I'm just making sure I've got my timeline right. So you did say at the beginning, you were on Amazon trying to build your business while you had a real job, but it was books and a few things on the side as you had time.
Right, exactly. So the 6 months that I went without a job was basically me just learning.
And then the 6 months, right?
Didn't even have an Amazon account, but I was just obsessed with YouTube and just really kind of learning how to, what everything was. So then when I got my job, it started basically January 1st of 19, started getting a little bit of money coming in from the job. So I felt a little bit more comfortable risking money to buy books. So kind of started sourcing books in January of 19.
Sure.
And then, so like I said, some of my kind of dilemmas were, the thrift stores close at 4, and I really kind of had time restraints, and I was competing with a lot of the other kind of cherry pickers, and so I was like, well, I got to find a way to where I can do this more on my time after hours, and also not compete with, I got to get the books before they get to the shelf.
Right. The early bird hitting the worm way before you get off work.
Right. So I, took a long time to build relationships, but I built some relationships with some local kind of thrift chains near me, and I got a hold of some Gaylords with big old batches of books, basically, and I started doing them in my garage. Started doing probably about 6 or 7 a week out of the garage is what I was doing, and that was a decent model, but the problem had its own challenges too, because getting rid of your duds and,
right.
a lot of the bigger stores that you work with that would help offload those duds, a lot of times they don't want to work with the residential address. They want you to have a loading dock, and, you really need to be kind of set up better for it.
Right.
So we made that work, basically made it work until about October or November of last year. Now, kind of mind you, I've subscribed to every software under the sun. All the repricers, all the, I had this kind of false impression that, the more stuff you subscribe to, the more wisdom you're going to get.
Yeah. Just to call a time out there, a lot of new sellers think, well, if I'm going to start a business, I'm going to have to invest. So they buy all these tools and all these courses and subscribe to all these services. And I think I know where your story's going.
Right.
Man, that's just not necessary. In fact, I tell people, new sellers especially, don't spend any money on any tools until you're getting checks from Amazon.
100% agree. And, I'm just going to fast forward just a little bit because we kind of went down that rabbit hole. But currently, I signed up for Inventory Labs 2 days ago. I've been doing everything from my seller account, like my seller app, this whole time. Like all of this kind of explosive growth I've had.
Yeah.
100% the seller app. No repricer, no third-party software. And I know, a lot of the stuff I need to get in the repricer I do have is for my book inventory still, but I don't have it repricing my merchant fulfilled stuff, which is what I'm kind of currently focused on. So 100% it's doable without a lot of fancy software. And so that was one of the things that I was struggling with, because all the money that I had coming in was going right back out the door to subscriptions and everything else. And so It was like, I really felt like I was spinning my wheels. And so I forget, it was either like October or November-ish time of last year, we signed up for coaching. So I ended up getting PAC, and then I got the Repins course, and then I got coaching.
Well, so the Repins course is included in the Proven Amazon course. So
correct. But I got
the Proven Amazon course, you got the Replins.
Correct.
You
but I
paid for
did it.
both. So we
I
owe
did
you
it
a
out
few
of order.
bucks. All right.
No worries, no big deal. It's paid for itself. So, and then I really we are kind of the worst model of what a coaching student is, because we're very indecisive. We keep changing, what we want, and we weren't very clear to a lot of our coaches. But the main thing that we really signed up for coaching for was because, my wife was contemplating going back to school. And so, I was like, babe, you give me 20 grand in 3 years and we're going to build a business, our business. And so I kind of basically talked her into, I didn't really talk her into it, but I think her reasoning for going back to school was more for security than anything. But her main thing was she wanted to, we've never put our kids in daycare or anything like that. So she wanted to be there to raise the kids and, our kids, and attend, field trips and stuff like that. And so I think she kind of realized that there was something that happened where she had to miss one of the kids' field trips. And so she was like, I just don't want that, so she kind of had a reset on her why.
Right.
And so that's when we decided to get coaching, because I basically more for her than for me, because I'm not the best at explaining stuff to her. That's a quick argument. So, I would just like, hey, can somebody else hold her hand, walk her through this start to finish, and really kind of, train her more so than me.
That is a first. Maybe it's happened at some point in the past, but I'm trying to think if I recall any stories where one spouse was working the business and they bought coaching for the other one to get them up to speed. It's kind of like sending your kid off to one of those schools that teaches them to drive instead of teaching them yourself. You can teach them yourself, but you know what? Let's just write a check and make sure we dot all the I's, cross all the T's. And she may learn something. I'm sure you were thinking she may learn something I don't know yet, and enhance the whole thing. So,
and I by no means was sitting here saying that I knew how to do it all. It's just a matter of, I know that my way of teaching is not her way of learning. And so just try to avoid, avoid any kind of arguments on the subject. It's just, hey, let's just find like a mediator to help explain it to both. So we both kind of attended. It wasn't like I was off doing my thing and she was doing the coaching sessions. We still did them together, but this is where I'm tying in where I was kind of a bad student, because we told them, hey, treat us like we just signed up for an account. Treat us like this. And then they would.
Because that's where she was. That's where your wife was.
Right, exactly. But then we would find ourselves thinking, well, dang, we kind of already knew all that stuff. But that's what we asked for. So I can see, if I were to critique myself or us as a student, we probably aren't the best students for mixed messages, So that was kind of the beginning of the fourth quarter of last year. We actually saw a decline in our sales, October, November, and December. And again, it was just, we're really trying to find out something that worked for us. And so I'm in outside sales. I have a very large sales territory. And so, I thought that maybe I could take advantage of that and the large footprint that I cover. My company kind of covers my gas and a lot of my expenditures. So, something just wasn't clicking. I don't know what it was. I was just not finding products. I'd leave the store frustrated a ton.
And what was your strategy there when you were you scanning barcodes?
It was mainly the replens training.
Okay.
I would find myself discouraged, and I'd say, man, I'm just not.
It wasn't clicking for you yet.
It just wasn't clicking, and I think the difference where I am now versus where I was is, rather than me I'll tie that in just a second. But so we ended up after. Okay, so this is kind of funny. So in January, we decided to abort the RA model and go back to books. So we got a warehouse. I kind of partnered up with a buddy of mine who was going to help cash flow an employee. And so I was like, okay, well, we can get a warehouse. There's an extra room in that warehouse, so we can set up kind of like a kids' play area. My wife and the employee can scan books. Now we've kind of taken care of the dud issue because now we've got people that can come, and it's not residential.
Right.
And
the trucks can get in there.
The trucks can get in. Yeah. And so we got a full truckload. And it was like a sign. There were so many things that went against us when we had that warehouse. It was the worst experience ever. So like the first load of books, we were kind of all in on this truckload, 48,000 pounds of books. And it was a very, very bad load. We got screwed on that load. So my business partner, he got a very bad first impression on this whole deal. We basically lost money on the first load. And then, obviously then like 2 weeks later, the coronavirus and Amazon stopping inbound shipments. So we're like, oh, dang, we've got all these books and we can't send them in. And then about 2 weeks after that, our supplier shut down. And about 2 weeks after that, my wife finds out that she's pregnant. So it's like,
so
there's no way that
you guys couldn't get. Well, Amazon wasn't they were only taking essentials there. For those who don't remember that point in time, the only thing you could ship to Amazon was essentials. And even those, some of them they wouldn't accept because they had a small staff. So you had to sell them yourself. So book sellers were kind of stuck.
Right.
So you stopped being able to send in books, which is your main product.
Correct.
You stopped being able to source books because, that warehouse, wherever they're coming from, is shut down probably, right?
Correct.
You find out your wife is pregnant. And that's not that long ago, buddy. I mean, it feels like about 8 years ago because of how much the world has changed in 4 months. But that's pretty recent history as we're talking to this.
Correct.
All right, man.
Yeah, this is February, March. And so I'm just thinking ahead. I'm like, well, the whole idea was like, well, we got to get profitable enough so that we can outsource the labor. But then the supplier shut down, so like, well, we can't get them. And then with my wife getting pregnant, it's like, there's no way that she's going to be scanning books while she's raising 3 kids, one of which is a toddler in the middle of a hot warehouse in the middle of summer, in South Alabama. So I started kind of scrambling. And then, so I ended up contacting our coaches. We went a couple months without any sessions, so probably about 2 months with no sessions. And I was like, hey, we're back to the drawing board. We need to figure something out. And so at that time, we were kind of notified that our previous coaches were stepping back. And so we got assigned a new coach. And, it wasn't anything that our new coach said that was any different than our previous coaches. It was something, it might have been just timing, with the virus and just the demand going up and everyone staying home. But he mentioned some stuff to me to help me kind of think differently. And I don't even know if I can say specifically what it was, but it was more along the lines of think about what people are buying right now. Rather than trying to go down a random aisle and just finding stuff, just stop and think for a second. What are people looking for?
Yeah.
And around that same time, I think you shared a link to what people were buying or what sales were increasing.
Yeah, it was a cool infographic. I'll have to stick it in the show notes. Basically, it says, here's all the stuff that people are buying like crazy during a virus pandemic, and here's all the stuff that they're not buying. And a lot of it's common sense, but several of them trigger a thought like, I hadn't thought of that, but I guess it makes sense. It's not a list you could kind of brainstorm. It's based on actual retail data. And got in the show notes because we're still very much feeling the effects of, people are staying home. What are they buying? What are they not buying? There's a lot of things people just aren't buying again yet.
Yeah. I'm not huge on the news, but the little bit I've listened to, it kind of sounds like it's going to stay this way for a while. So I don't, anticipate it going away anytime soon. But but basically looking at that list that you shared, plus the conversation I had with my coach, it really just kind of started getting me thinking about exactly that. Like, what are people buying right now? And so I kind of just, I found a couple of products, and I don't know if this is something that you teach necessarily, but I ended up finding other people that were selling it and just started looking at their stores. And I was like, what is their store? If they're selling this thing and it's a great value brand product, then they're obviously getting it at Walmart. So took a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt because I don't know how, like those sellers, I don't know necessarily much about them. They may not know what they're doing either, but it gave me leads, you know? And so I remember one time I got a Microsoft Surface Pro and I connected it to my Wi-Fi hotspot. And I was just in Walmart with this like Surface Pro and the buggy, just going through looking for products and just, there it is, you know? And obviously would kind of look into more of the data and everything myself to make an informed buying decision. But
and this is all, just to clarify for the listeners, this is all Replin's training.
Correct.
And you know, you've heard several episodes recently. Let me just make a couple announcements while you catch your breath and take a break for a minute. Don't lose your spot though, okay?
Yeah.
We're going to mention some resources today, and like that infographic that Brandon just mentioned, silentgem.com/podcast. Silentgem.com, or just click on the podcast button. Look at today's episode. You'll see in the show notes, depending on where you're listening, you may or may not see show notes. But that's where you can find it, and links to all this stuff that we're talking about, the Replin's training, the infographic that we talked about, any of the links we talked about. So that's an important thing. And all of our other shows too. If you're watching us on YouTube today, you should know that most of our episodes aren't video. The vast majority are audio only. So go to silentgem.com and you can hear all those episodes too. Good time to drop that reminder in there. But yeah, part of what we train you're not scanning barcodes as you walk down the aisle. You're looking at product by name. And a lot of people will just take a video or take some pictures of the aisle because they're not comfortable going super slow down an aisle. Because once you've got the Replin skill set, you can almost see a Replin person in action. They're just moving super slow through one aisle. And that could be all they do for like an hour or two. Or you could take some pictures and take them home and do your research that way, which more people are getting more and more comfortable with. But so there you go, scanning, going through scanning, and like, how did that business model vary from like the books? Like, I gotta think there's more flexibility, predictability. It had to feel really good pretty fast, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I felt with the books was there was kind of three things. It's predictable based on our source. You know, if we stuck with the same source, we kind of knew what our scan rate was going to be. It was predictable, outsourceable, and scalable. You know, those are kind of the things that I felt like I had a good grasp on. But it just didn't fit our situation, you know, because I do have a full-time job still. And so I'm not able to sit up there at a warehouse and scan books all day long. So, you know, it felt a lot better because the returns are a lot better. I actually saw the needle move, you know, when I started doing a lot of the Replin stuff. And, you know, I'm the kind of person that there's not much shame in my game, so to speak. I have no problem spending time at Walmart and getting in people's, not necessarily getting in their way, but, you know, have people kind of work around me. A lot of people may get uncomfortable or have some anxiety about sitting in one spot for an extended period of time. But I don't think of it that way at all. You know, right. So I told a buddy of mine, I was like, I just saw a guy in a fox suit onesie with a gas mask walk by me. Like, this Walmart's the place where there's no shame, you know? And so I can buy.
That's so true, man. Yeah. Especially right now, you know, there's all kinds of crazy. So you taking your time going down an aisle, looking at people just think you're, you know, reading an article or something, or, you know, they don't care. You're looking at your device. It's actually a lot less suspicious looking than scanning a bunch of barcodes. That feels awkward to a lot of people. You know, scanning barcodes on the shelf. Like, we don't know. We don't do that. You're looking up the description. You're typing in the product description and doing the research that we train you. And you're using the tool called Keepa, which we talk about all the time around here. KEEPA, Keepa.com. And you're just doing your research as you go down the aisle. That's the gig. But yeah,
exactly.
Keep going, man.
And one thing that I think Jimmy mentions in the training that I think is, I don't know, I feel like it may have been glossed over a little bit, but it's been extremely powerful for me, is just started doing this a couple of weeks ago, is there's a ton of items that the seller app doesn't find, that if you use the buyer app, you could find it that way. And there was a ton of items that I wasn't able to find just typing it in, you know, add product in the seller app, you know,
that's using the great tip.
And to be honest with you, I don't have legendary sourcing. I don't have, you know, any other sourcing software. So it might show up in the other stuff, but I didn't have it. I'm just using the seller app. So I just
The
pulled
seller
up
app.
the buyer
And,
app.
and so people know, like, what's the buyer app? What's that? You just go to
Basically,
Amazon.com.
if you're just an Amazon customer, just you can download Amazon's app, and
Yep.
not
Or
necessarily as a
just pull
seller.
up Amazon.com on your
Yeah.
phone.
Yep.
Same,
Exactly.
I've heard you get actually slightly different results that way too, versus using the app.
So just Amazon.com.
Yeah, Amazon.com, man. So if you, as you're researching and you type in the name of that product, scroll through, get some ideas. You see one that looks interesting. You do a little research on Keepa, and you'll start to develop some really good instincts very fast. And you'll just see stuff jump off the page at you. It's like, what? Someone's paying $18 for that? Man, I can get those for $2-3 a piece.
Exactly.
Right. And that's where you start to get excited, and this makes sense. And you hear these stories of these people finding a couple dozen replens, which means this is going to be a repeat selling item, consistently selling the same amount to different people. Doesn't have to be a consumable. We say that all the time. We're not just shopping in grocery here, guys. We're talking, the example we always use, it could be a hammer, it could be a screwdriver, but it sells consistently at a good profit margin. So you know how many you need to buy, you know when it's time to buy more, and you know how much you're going to make when selling it.
I made a killing in the sports and outdoors category. It doesn't have to be grocery.
Nope.
But one thing that I lost my train of thought. One thing that I was going to say is a lot of these people that create listings, they're pretty smart, and they do a really good job at hiding the listing. Meaning if you scan it with the barcode or even take a picture of it, a lot of times it's going to show. Most of my profitable products show up as not found if I were to just straight up scan it. Most of them have been found through reverse sourcing or just using the buyer app and just looking it up on Amazon, and then just kind of going, I guess, more old school with it. And that's one thing that we've really kind of focused on is we canceled a bunch of subscriptions. Like I said, I just re-signed up because I got to get my accounting in order. That's what I've been doing all day, is getting my accounting in order. So kind of signed up for Inventory Labs for that purposes, but in Keepa. But a lot of the stuff, the last couple of months have been so good that you can pretty much look at a sales rank and you don't even need Keepa for the last couple. Now I'm not saying that that's normal, but I understand with sales rank being a snapshot in time. I understand that. But sales have been so strong lately that you really don't need to. Somebody had made a comment in the replens Facebook group saying that they're struggling with finding a replen, and my comment to them was don't label it a replen until it's sold. Like, just buy it. If it sells, buy 3 of them. If it sells, buy 7, and just slowly increase your buy quantity. And that's what I've been doing anyways. If I find something that it looks kind of profitable, I'll buy one. If it doesn't sell, I'm going to return it.
Right.
So that's the beauty of it. And if it sells, then I'll buy a couple more. But I don't go deep on anything until it's kind of proven itself out. So
you test small, test slow, and let things prove themselves out.
Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, share some of the numbers, because one of the things that prompted us to do this podcast episode, if I recall, was some pretty impressive screenshots, one of our coaching success stories that you posted in the Facebook group. And typically when those pop up, I'll reach out, or someone on the team will reach out and go, hey, man, do you want to tell your story on the podcast? We'd love to have you as a guest. And surprisingly, most people are kind of uncomfortable with it. And they say, I don't know. I don't know if I want to get on video. And just so you know, if that's you, if you're listening right now or watching right now and you're like, we can do audio only and use a first name only if you want to. We're not going to give away your secrets. But people love hearing these stories. So we were glad to hear that you were willing to do an episode with us, Brandon.
Yeah, definitely.
We love doing these, but it was some impressive numbers. Now, talk me through a little bit what you had going on there.
Until January of this year, I never did more than 10,000 in a month. So pretty consistent, graph of around the 10 to 13K mark.
That was a lot of books.
A lot of books. There's a lot of $12 books. So in February, we did right around 20 grand. And then March, it kind of dipped down. But in April, we did like 180 grand, which is crazy to even think about,
That's insane. Yeah. March dipped because you couldn't get any more books and you were transitioning to something new.
Exactly.
But once you transitioned, which just took you a few weeks with replens, it exploded. How many different products? You just said 180,000. You were like 10, 180. Like, what just happened? That's the pandemic effect. The whole world started shopping online more, twice as much shopping as we were doing before. And it's still holding steady. And again, to make a point that you made a few minutes ago, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Even if we're given the all clear, hey, no one needs a mask. Hey, the virus is gone. Hey, it's all good now. There's going to be a lot of people. I keep saying, I think we've created a whole new wave of millions of Howie Mandel's, which is like, he's a germaphobe, right? He's a famous comedian in the United States. He's like, we've created a bunch of germaphobes. There's going to be plenty of people wearing masks after everyone's been told you don't have to wear masks anymore. And they're going to be staying home when they shop. So that effect is here to stay. So that was a big factor, but I'm curious how many different products were in that 180,000. Did you find like one or two just like and went all in, or
no? I don't have the exact number. I would say it's probably around 50 different SKUs,
50 replens, and it took you a couple weeks to nail those down.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously sourcing them was,
well, it doesn't hurt whenever you're sold out by the time you get to the next store. So you kind of know that it's going to sell well. A lot of them, that was
just so people know when you're sourcing the product, you can say, yeah, I list it right now. And so I've heard of plenty of people where the product is sold before they take it to the cash register to check out. Happens all the time.
Definitely experience that for sure.
Happens all the time.
So it's like, well, let me go back and get more, since I'm here. So it took me, I think one of the biggest problems, and this is something that I wrote down because I definitely wanted to make sure that I mentioned it. I don't think it gets talked about a lot is cash flow. Because when you're just doing 10 grand a month and you jump to 180, there's got to be some cash that's being spent, And so one thing that, and I have a newer kind of account, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's like 3 different versions. Like if you're like an older seller, you could just do daily disbursements. Just sell it today. You can put that in your bank account tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's virtually impossible to get now if you've got your account like in the past 5 years. Very few people get that daily disbursement. And
then I heard some others where they can't get daily disbursements, but it's just in there, if you sell it today, it's getting put on your disbursement when you're scheduled to get it. Right. So there's no reserve or unreserved balance. And so that's what I have I've got the newer account where you have a reserved and an available and an unavailable balance.
Sure.
And so what this looks like is, let's say you find an item that costs you $20. It costs you $10 to ship it because we're merchant fulfilling it. And it's going to net you a $10 profit. Let's just play with those numbers. So I buy the item, $20 out of my pocket. When I sell it, the proceeds of the sale don't go into my account until I buy the shipping. So when I buy the shipping, the cost of the shipping, if I'm using Seller Central, the cost of the shipping comes out of my available balance. But the proceeds of the sale gets put into my unavailable balance. So in a nutshell, I've got to front the cost of the goods plus the cost of shipping for roughly 3 weeks. So it really kind of messed me up.
Amazon gets paid first, basically. Yeah, they get paid first. Have you ever played around with, they're a great friend of our community. They've been a sponsor at some of our events, Payability, to get your money out faster?
I haven't.
They charge a little bit for the service, but to mitigate cash flow issues, sometimes it's worth it to have that daily disbursement or that regular disbursement. Payability, you should look into them.
Yeah, I think they might have even reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. At the time, I hadn't really hadn't experienced the growth yet, so I didn't need them. But so luckily I've kind of well-versed and kind of financially savvy, so I kind of know how money works and things like that. So I was able to kind of juggle it. And it doesn't hurt also that I don't really need the money from this. Everything's getting rolled back into it. So it's not like I'm withdrawing money to pay my bills or put food on my table. So that really helped with the cash flow. But I'm not a huge fan. I'm kind of a Dave Ramsey guy. I'm not a huge fan of credit cards, but we did use some credit cards for business purposes. They're all paid off. So, nothing crazy lingering out there, but because we got some no interest credit cards. Mm-hmm. So we were able to kind of manage those and, they gave me a credit limit increase. So we were able to kind of manage those and make it through. But that's definitely something that I had to make an adjustment on. I was not prepared to tie up, a lot of money for a couple of weeks. So it all worked out. Things are starting to kind of, I guess, I don't want to say slow down, but they are starting to normalize a little bit. So it's starting to kind of catch up. The money's starting to catch up. But definitely something that if you're a newer seller and you have the newer account and you do experience growth, I would just say, expect a cash flow deal. A cash flow issue may happen. So
you're waiting on your money, and you want to go buy more inventory, but Amazon's sitting on your money that you earned selling. Exactly. Right? It can come back at you slower. They sometimes check inventory in very slow, and sometimes they pay you very slow. But it's nice to have that big balance out there of like, hey, what's coming. That gives you confidence that you're doing something right. And
right
keeps you moving forward. Like, okay, I'm making money here, so you get other creative ways to maybe source some funds. But yeah, that's a great tip, man. Just kind of being heads up. The cash flow could be an issue, especially if you go from $10,000 a month to $180,000. Like, where'd you get? Because that represents what $100,000 or $80,000 of inventory, something like that.
I would say so. So a lot of the shipping fees just came out of my available balance that I had just from the 10K kind of rolling.
Right.
And then just a matter of just juggling. I had 2 different credit cards that we just kind of kept juggling and just paid this one off before the interest hit. And then this one had no interest. And so just between juggling it, if I had to guess, so I did come into a couple of really kind of high dollar products. I was selling one for like $2,700, and so a lot of people kind of get scared of buying something maybe that costs that much, or there's a little more risk involved. It didn't cost me that much. That's what I was selling it for.
Sure.
But
what'd you buy it for? What was your price?
There's a couple of different ones. There's one that I bought. I paid like $180 and sold it for like $1,600, and then there's another one I paid $300 and I sold it for $2,700. And I sold like 4 of them.
That's a nice margin, dude.
Yeah, I was super sad. And those all sold on the same day. I rented a box truck, and I just went on a road trip. And I just the stuff selling like this within hours of putting it in inventory.
That's beautiful.
That was the first. I had a $20,000 day that day. And it just blew my mind, it's still kind of, it doesn't even feel real, but
yeah, that sounds a lot more, that's a lot more fun than flipping 1,000 books to get that money.
Yeah. Especially the dirty, hot warehouse. Oh yeah. I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier today, and he's still really hard on the, bulk books, and he was telling me that he'd been scanning all day, and I thought, man, I don't miss that at all.
That's right.
It's for some people, some people, sure, that's their thing. And I do feel like you can still successfully do it. It just wasn't my thing,
Right. Well, what are the lessons you got for us? What are the numbers that, kind of what's the normal? We saw a little spike there. Mm-hmm. I don't want people to feel like, oh, I missed out on that, the Corona spike. Online shopping is still ridiculously on fire. Q4 is coming up, the fourth quarter of the year, October, November, December. What are you forecasting for that? What kind of year are you putting together, man? And what's the normal look like now for you? Now that we're kind of on the other side of that initial freak out of the virus, what's normal now?
Well, I mean, I'm still doing $3-4 grand a day in sales, so I don't know I hope that's normal. I want it to be the new normal, but when you go from 10 grand to basically 180, I really don't know what the new normal is. Somebody else had made a comment, what's your buying goals? And I don't want to set, to me, that's setting a limit. If my goal is to spend $2,000, I'm not going to shut it off after buying $2,000 worth of stuff, because if there's still more stuff to buy, I'm going to get it. So I don't want to put a limit. Exactly. So I really hope I can finish the year at around 800 grand. I would love to finish the year around 800 grand. I'm at 330 so far. So it may or may not happen. But that's a goal that I would probably, if I had to put a number on it, I'd probably say around 800 grand. And then
yeah, that sounds very reasonable to me, with the fourth quarter coming up, and you're not just doing books this fourth quarter.
No, I'm not doing any books.
You're doing stuff that's going to fly off the shelf this fourth quarter.
Yeah,
that sounds very reasonable to me. That October, November, December magic starts to kick in, buddy. And this year, everyone's going to shop online for Christmas. It's just going to be, no one wants to go to the mall and risk being literally mauled, riot, or whatever. Like, it's just, malls are going to take a beating. You can kind of see it coming, man. I feel bad for that business model. The old brick and mortar retail business model is going to be hit pretty hard this year. And that's going to be the new normal. That's my prediction. But those of us who are selling stuff online, not just Christmas presents, but everything, people are shopping online. And the money that's spent in the fourth quarter of the year, 800 is a very reasonable goal. I wouldn't be surprised if you quite easily, with the model you've described, break right through that.
I hope so.
That line. Yeah, man. It's beautiful. You're set up in a really good way. You manage your numbers well. And you pay attention to what you're buying. You go in slow. You don't take big risks with your inventory. A lot of good lessons in your approach.
One thing that you had mentioned that kind of stood out to me just a second ago is talking about maybe somebody felt like they missed the wave or whatever. I'll tell you, I even said this earlier in the show. In fourth quarter last year, every month we saw a decline. October, November, December, it was a decline. And it was extremely discouraging. I'm not going to lie. I really felt like we missed it. We missed the boat, but guess what? There's going to be another one next year. They're predictable. They're coming. So that was one thing that, I feel like that maybe my biggest story was that I didn't quit, because I have almost quit so many daggone times that it's ridiculous. And, if there's one person out there that just decides to not quit after listening to this, then that's a success for me, because it really just takes, I don't know, it's just like a light switch. And that's one thing that the coaches always said was, it's just going to switch. It's just going to click one day. Yeah. And it's not really explainable, but it's true, Yeah.
And, that's almost a litmus test. You can hey, has Replens clicked for you yet?
Right.
And if people go, well, that means it hasn't yet.
Right.
Because once it does, you're like, oh yeah, I can hop in the car anytime I want. Give me an hour and I'll come out with 8 new Replens, any retail store anywhere.
Exactly.
Once it clicks, it's like, it's a cakewalk. It takes a little bit of time to get there. Some people it takes a little longer than others. We've got several different ways you can learn it. Some people pick up the course and that's all they need. They go inside the Proven Amazon course, grab the Replen module, look at the videos, makes sense. They go off and do it. Other people, we just formed our Replen group mentoring. I'm not sure if the doors are open on that or not right now. I don't know if you heard word of that, Brandon, but our group mentoring, about 50 people at a time, and forming partnerships and accountability groups inside of, it's a really cool concept. I'll stick a link to it in the show notes, silentgem.com. But it's just proven, and the link you need is provenamazoncourse.com/RGM, Replen Group Mentoring, just lowercase RGM, provenamazoncourse.com/RGM. That'll get you into a small group, and we're going to run those, as often as there's demand for it, and just see how it goes. We're actually launching the first round right now as we're recording this. It may be already full by the time people are hearing this, but go to that site and we'll let you know what's up with that. Other people do the coaching like you did, And then still other people actually have someone from our team fly to their hometown, go to the stores with them, walk up and down the aisle. And by the time they leave a couple days later, you've got between 50 and over 100 in many cases, replens. Like, and you know how to do it now. And the predictability of this business model is unlike anything that we've ever done, because we're helping you find profitable products that you can sell over and over and over again. And then you can get into the wholesale. You can just hand your shopper a shopping list. Are you doing much of that yet? Do you have other people doing your shopping for you yet? That seems like a good next step for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting into that. So my wife, we've kind of figured out like what works for us. So my wife she's about as good of a prepper that you're going to get. So she really does a good job at kind of the logistics of prepping and shipping and just handling all that. She's the one that made the relationships with the post office and the UPS. And so, and then about a week ago, I had surgery. So, one of these items that I'm selling is really hot right now. And it's like, dang it, I'm kind of down for the count, and so a buddy of mine who's been kind of wanting to get into it, I said, I'll pay you $2 for every one that you find. And I know there's a lot of different payment models and you can pay them hourly, but I just felt like this was the kind of most incentive. Like, how much money do you want to make? Go out there and make it.
How far do you want to drive? Do you want to get online and source them? Do you want to, right? That's beautiful. Yep. Yeah. Just send them out on a mission. I love it.
Yeah. I told him, I was like, if you do decide to drive outside of our city, then I'll pay your gas.
Yeah.
And so I am slowly starting to get into that. I had an employee when I first transitioned over out of the warehouse back into the garage. And again, I'm taking full responsibility for this. It did not work out very well. I did not probably do a very good job training him. And so a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the bundles and 2-packs and stuff that he did not send out properly. Okay. And it cost me quite a bit of money in returns. And I took a couple of hits on feedback. So that didn't work out, but I'm not blaming him. I'm taking full responsibility for it. So.
Yeah. You got to have the training and process in place, but it's hard to mess up shopping, especially if you're paying someone per unit.
Exactly. It's like, hey, go buy this, set them up with, BrickSeek. I'm not sure, how much your audience knows about that, but I just set them up with BrickSeek. And I was like, look, go find these and, have at it. And then there's a couple different items I've got them looking for. One item, I'm paying them $20 a pop for. It's hard to find, but if you get it, and you can get it at the same place that you can get the $2 item from too. So while you're there, look out for it. So I am slowly kind of getting into that, but I would like to scale it up more.
Nice. Well, I think that's a good next step for you, to where you've got other people out there just, in not scanning barcodes, looking for deals. They're not looking for new replens. They're just going out and buying the stuff that you already know is profitable. That's a cool model. That's a really cool model.
There was one.
Go ahead.
There was just one thing that I wrote down. I wanted to make sure I mentioned it was.
Yeah, please do.
So I do have a large kind of sales territory in my job.
Right. And you mentioned you do a lot of traveling.
What that allows me to do, I see regional products. So there's an item that Walmart has that's an hour away from me that is ranked like 1,500 in grocery. It's not the biggest, dollar profit in the world, but, you're going to sell 20 of them a day but if you find it, you will not find them in my hometown. But so I'm starting to see items that I can't get here that I can get over there. And so, some people, hey, you need to get out and drive. Drive a little bit. You might find stuff that you're not finding in your backyard,
That's right. That's good. Yeah. I mean, you can do the same thing online too.
True. That's true.
Yeah. Walmarts are definitely regional. You'll see different prices. I mean, you could have 2 Walmarts in your town and there'll be different prices on the same exact item. They're locally run by a manager that runs all the numbers for that store. And, they don't even necessarily honor each other's sale prices back and forth. Sometimes it's crazy. They're independent. So that's a great tip. And it feels like we're talking about Walmart a lot, but I just want to make sure people understand any retail store.
Yeah, I just
know how to look for replens. Any retail store.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
I
did
found
you
my
have,
little honey hole there, but I've also got plenty of other stores that I go to. That's just the easiest one to talk
of
about.
course, that's the one everyone recognizes. So we use it as a reference point in our conversation. But anything else on that list, man? You've had some good stuff on your list that you were going to share with everyone.
I think there's two other things definitely. So, one, talking about making buying decisions. I think that somebody told me this a long time ago. It wasn't even related to selling on Amazon. It was just about buying stuff in general, or even like with the stocks or anything like that. Is people, it's important to separate your emotions and not make buying decisions based on emotions. And
That's good.
make them more based on data and the
Yeah.
facts.
Emotion and instinct are not your friends.
Correct. And I think the two emotions specifically that people get hung up on is fear and greed. As I try to stay in between the middle, above fear and below greed. And I think anytime you kind of go outside of those kind of boundaries, you're in dangerous territory, And so try to make your decisions, but not based on fear or greed or any emotions. And that's why, like, for instance, that higher dollar item is, I didn't have any problem with it. I didn't feel like it was really all that risky, because the data was pointing in the right direction.
Right.
I wasn't allowing fear get in the way, or I would have bought all of them. I bought all they had. They only had two, but again, I don't have a garage full of product that I can't sell because I'm not getting greedy on this stuff. I'm just trying to find the right balance.
Right.
So that was one point I wanted to make. And then another point that I wanted to make was, being in sales, I work off commission, right? And so, sometimes these companies pay you 5 or 6% commission. So let's think about this. So, if you put up, let's just say 50 grand in sales, and let's say your average, let's just say worst case scenario, your margin's 20%, you're still looking at, what's that? I don't even, off the top of my head, I didn't even prepare myself on the math on it, but 20% of 100 grand is still 20 grand, right? So 20% of 10 grand is 10 grand, of 50 grand. So let's just say we have a sales goal of 50 grand a month. The margins are so much better building your own company as opposed to kind of building somebody else's company.
I follow you.
That's kind of what I was getting at. It was like, some people say, well, what's your profit on that? It's like, well, don't get hung up so much on that, because let's say worst case scenario, it's just 20%.
Right.
Like, way bigger than a lot of people get paid whenever they work for another company,
That's right. I worked in the tech industry as my last real job, and I remember doing really big deals, like, 7-figure deals, and my commission is 1/4 point.
Exactly.
Like that, and I had to work a long, hard time for that $1,000 on that massive software order, right? Like, man, Bill Gates is getting rich, but I'm not. But when you do this, you can get up into those just awesome margins where you're taking home a nice big piece, and everyone's like, "Oh, you got to try to get up as close to 40%," and like 10% is better than most professional sales reps out there, right?
Exactly.
People sell a house and they split the commission and make 3%.
Exactly.
I did a house deal not too long ago, selling a house that we had to move for a grandparent who passed away. But man, that real estate agent worked and worked and worked. I was doing the math, and I'm like, she made about $30 an hour by the time it was over, and she worked hard.
Exactly.
We're blessed to be in this model where, have you ever broken it down to like an hourly for you? Like, what are you doing per hour right now? I'd be curious. You should do that sometime.
Yeah.
Just do the math. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars per hour easily.
Well, I mean, on a micro level, like that day that I did like a 20 grand day. I mean, there's no way I worked more than, I probably worked 10 hours factoring in drive time and everything, because I was going on a road trip. That was the whole purpose of it.
Sure.
So,
sure.
But man,
that's not a typical everyday thing, but you stretch that out over 6 months or 3 months, and you kind of get your rate, and you think, wow, I'm getting paid more than most lawyers to do this.
For sure. Especially right now. Yeah. And it's like, let's just, and that's something I kind of told my wife. I was like, let's say worst case scenario, we lower our standards and we start looking for something that's giving you a 10% ROI.
Right.
$1 million business is still going to bring you 100 grand a year. Like, It's like, and if you do that, then if you're willing to accept 10%, then that opens up so many more products that are, available to you. So I definitely see where Jimmy was talking about early on in the course, where capital may be an issue. So look for the faster selling, higher ROI items. I 100% agree.
Yeah. Especially when you're getting started, it's nice to try to get some of those bigger wins instead of getting, tiny checks.
But I just think in the grand scheme of things, if you were to just say, if we just compare our $1 million business with somebody else's $1 million business working for another company, we're going to be doing much better.
That's right.
Financially. So I think that's kind of what I'm kind of a money motivated individual. So that kind of stuff motivates me, it reminds me of, it's like, wait a second, I did this all day for 5% commission when it's like we're getting 20 to 30, 40% over there. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people need to put it more in perspective. It's like, let's say worst case scenario, 10%, which is, I agree, that's not very good, but still actually pretty good if you were to, magnify it. So
compared to a real job, it's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm hearing some little voices in the background, man. Tell us about your family a little bit.
Yeah, I got a little 2-year-old. I'm surprised she hasn't jumped on me yet, but
that would be the highlight of the show if she did, man.
A 2-year-old girl. So we had 2 boys, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and then a couple of years ago, my wife was like, I want to have a girl. So I was like, there's no way we're having a girl. It's just not happening. And sure enough, she got pregnant and we got a girl. So
nice. Little
we got
princess.
2 boys, a girl, and a boy on the way.
So, oh man, you're blessed, dude. Beautiful. That's awesome.
We're out growing.
Your wife's right in the mix, working the business with you, working hard.
Oh yeah.
You guys have a special setup, man.
Definitely could not. I mean, you can buy the stuff all day long, but if you don't send it out the door, then it's not going to do anything. And she's 100% responsible for getting that stuff out the door. And
she's on it. Yeah, you told me before, like she takes great pride in clearing the floor fast.
Oh yeah. Like there'll be somebody who bought something, and then within an hour they'll message me and say, "Oh, my son bought this on accident. Can we cancel?" And it's like, nope, it already shipped.
It's shipped, dude. As you were hitting the buy button, my wife was slapping a label on the box. Man, so.
Yep, that's the truth. He's a beast in the packing.
So you guys did a lot of merchant fulfill yourself during that.
100%. Yeah, I haven't sent an FBA shipment in since January. So we've just been.
Wow.
We're not the most conventional probably guest you've had on here, but yeah, 100% of what we've done, we put tape. We've boxed everything that somebody sold. Yeah.
Well, and when you do the math, you're making more money. So instead of paying Amazon to lose your inventory and damage your inventory and charging you a fee to do it, FBA is beautiful 97% of the time. But then you get those they lost something, and you send them 50, and they say you sent them 43, and it's there's going to be challenges. So if you are able to send, especially on those higher end items like you talked about, you don't want one of those getting lost in the warehouse. That's $300 item you sold for 27 or whatever it was. You don't want them losing a couple of those, right. Man. That hurts.
And I do feel like I'm a little bit more in control. I feel like it's more of my business because I'm, now will I go back to FBA? 100%. I'm about getting tired. I'm getting a little tired of boxing stuff. But when the getting's good, get all you can get. But it's just. The customer, I appreciate FBA and how they deal with the customers, because that is probably the most tedious part of everything. Is just the customer inquiries are just because they don't stop, and even if you take a day off, you still got to respond. And if and I still got a job, so I'm still trying to manage everything. So it is a lot. It is starting to kind of add up, but yeah. That's growing pains.
It's a season, man. It's a season of intense, focused effort is what you're in. It's not sustainable for the next 3 years.
Right.
Something will switch or flip. You'll go full-time Amazon at some point. Maybe hire a team to where you can be more freed up and keep that regular check coming in from the real job while, doing the parts of it that you enjoy or that only you can do. But yeah, you've got a lot of options in front of you. You're positioned extremely well with a beautiful young family, man. These are the kind of episodes and the families that just warms my heart, because you guys have options. You have a nice future. Some of those challenges that hit every family at some point, you're going to be writing a check to mitigate those challenges versus sweating it out. Like, what do we do? How do we go find the funds to do this?
Right.
You just write a check and move on with your life because you've built something incredible and you're doing it from home with your wife, man. That's just a beautiful thing.
One of the most rewarding things so far, because, when you're constantly rolling it back into it, you don't really have anything tangible. You know what I mean? To like show. And we wrote it a couple of days ago, wrote a $20,000 check and I paid off my student loans. And let me tell you, that was the best feeling in the whole world. If that don't motivate somebody right there, I don't know. Like that, because my wife I haven't paid her. She hasn't taken a dime. And we both agreed. We're like, this is payment tenfold, to just to have them things out of here and don't have to write that $500. We've been, paying $500 a month on them things for the last 7 years. And so,
it's
nice.
Yep. You kicked her out of the house, man. That was it Sally Mae or whatever?
Sally Mae got evicted.
Sally Mae got evicted. That's a Dave Ramsey line, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Sally. That's a big education lender for those who don't know it. Man, that's a really cool story. I truly enjoyed hanging out with you today, man. It's some great tips, and you're a sharp dude, and you've got a bright future. And I love that you kind of came up through our systems around here, the Proven Amazon course and the coaching, and you helped sharpen us along the way, even with some of the things you've taught us. And I think some people are going to be pretty motivated after this to jump in and start making some things happen.
Yeah, definitely. I hope so.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to talk to the listener for just a minute and say, hey, thanks for hanging out with Brandon and I today. I truly enjoy doing these episodes. I hope you do as well. And the only payment we ask for in return is leave us a review, wherever you're listening. If you're on iTunes or if you're on any other your favorite listening app for podcasts, leave us a review. Tell us what you think. Jump into our Facebook group. If you go to silentgym.com, there's a link to our Facebook group, and you can jump in there with thousands, tens of thousands of other people who are using the internet creatively to launch and grow businesses. That's what we do around here. And we love serving this community. But if there's any final thoughts, Brandon, before I wrap up this episode, man, you got anything to say to the listeners, maybe someone that's new out there, or any words of advice, and then I'll land this episode, man.
All I would say is don't quit. If you need some words of encouragement, reach out to me. We can chat. I've had a few people do that. I've hopped on a messenger call with somebody while I was at Walmart sourcing, and I got no problem. I love helping people, and I think the biggest thing is just not quitting. I think there's so many people that quit just right before that they break through, and so if you're listening, don't quit.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you can find Brandon and all the other great guests we have on our podcast in the Facebook group. They're regulars in there. I don't know if you want 8,000 people hitting you on your cell phone next week because we get a lot of people listening to this podcast, man. But I appreciate your heart and your offer, and you are in the Facebook group a lot. And we've got great coaches and great people in there. Ask your questions in there for sure.
Yes.
Because people just jump all over it from all over the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Internet-based e-commerce entrepreneurs building businesses on Amazon. We've got self-published authors in there, people using Shopify. It's a lot of Amazon focus right now because that is the low-hanging fruit model that we're able to teach people and ramp them up very quickly. But there's all kinds of opportunities out there and multiple streams of income, buddy. That's what it's all about. So, hey, to all the listeners out there who gave us some of their most valuable asset, their time, thank you for hanging out with us today. Brandon, please thank your wife for loaning you to us for a little while today. And we really appreciate that. And God bless all the business building warriors out there. We love doing this show, and we'll have another great episode for you again real soon.
Thanks a lot, Jim.